What's up, everyone? You are back with District Baseball. Congratulations, you just hit the best baseball source you could possibly come upon, whether you're on YouTube, audio form, wherever it may be. We appreciate you joining us. I am Nick. You can follow me on Twitter at the Coach Moose. He is Trey. You can follow him on Twitter at reverse 2Rs, 2Ss, in the show at District BSB. Ranking season rolls on, but unfortunately comes to a close tonight. But we are talking about all of the pitchers in baseball. Maybe not all of them, but the top 10 starting pitchers and top 5 or so relief pitchers that we'll cover at the end. Before we get to all of that, Trey, what's going on?
Nick, I think it's time for Overreaction Monday, which it's actually Sunday when we record this, but this is coming out on Monday. Which also, by the way, that was an NFL live segment, so I'm ripping that off. But James Wood has 2 home runs in 2 games, so I'm feeling great,
He
honestly,
does.
because that's happened. Obviously, spring training doesn't really mean all that much, but building some hype for me at least. But yeah, we're gonna get into our top 10 starting pitchers for the majority of the episode, and I was discussing with Nick before about how I don't think that there's a true dominant number one starting pitcher right now. There's some injuries as well with guys that aren't going to be pitching a full season or even at all in 2024. So that's kind of hurt the overall crop. It's still a great group, but it's hard to tell who's the overall number one. But I think we have placed Garrett Cole at number one. I think that's probably appropriate given that he's coming off of a Cy Young season where he led the American League in ERA and innings pitched. And those are my 2 favorite stats for judging for awards. So yeah, Garrett Cole comes in at number one. He pretty much has been this good since he got traded from Pittsburgh, going to the Astros, where they basically were like, hey, you should throw high in the zone. And he's like, yeah, that's probably a good idea. And believe it or not, it works for him. So he was excellent last year. The Yankees as a whole, that pitching staff should look a little bit better with guys getting healthy, and the addition of Marcus Stroman. So if Cole continues to be that guy for them, that's going to be good for them going forward and for a potential playoff push.
Yeah, just to go back and preface this list, it just feels very weird not to include guys like Scherzer, DeGrom, Ohtani, Verlander, Alcantara. I mean, he's a relative newcomer, but he was absolutely dominant. It just feels very weird. So, like, Garrett Cole finally comes in at this number one spot, which we were kind of wondering, especially after the signing with New York. And granted, he's been there for 4 years now. Like, was he ever, first of all, was he ever going to get that elusive Cy Young, which he finally did? And was he really going to not regain form? That makes it sound like he was really bad in New York. Like, he's still been very solid, but it wasn't quite to the level of Houston. And, that leads to a whole nother conversation of sticky stuff and whatever the Houston lab was doing and da-da-da-da-da. I'm not trying to get into all that, but just to your point about, not having a true number one, like, Garrett Cole has earned it, but somehow it still doesn't feel right, if that makes sense.
It's
like,
weird. It's definitely weird.
Yeah. Yeah, like, if someone says Garrett Cole's the best pitcher in baseball, which is effectively what we're claiming, you're not going to disagree.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
But it doesn't feel right.
Yeah, I don't.
Like, it feels like there should be someone better than Garrett Cole. And again, that's not the most analytical breakdown, but that's just kind of like how I feel looking at this ranking. I texted you when, we were combining our rankings. This feels like the most unsure top 10 I have ever done in any year. Just because this feels like how people say the Hall of Fame is the Hall of Very Good, not the Hall of Fame or whatever. This feels like the list of very good,
Yeah.
but not the list of the 10 best pitchers. Like that,
It's just there's no dominant
it's a weird
guys.
year.
Like, I mean, Cole's
It's a weird
dominant,
year.
Wheeler's dominant. Like, there's dominant players, but it's just like, yeah, they haven't been that dominant for like multiple years in a row. Like when we had like Scherzer with the Nats when he was at his peak, and then DeGrom obviously had multiple seasons where he was the clear-cut number one best guy, and I don't think we really have that. But like, again, we don't want to be acting like these guys are bad pitchers or anything, because they're clearly not. Garrett Cole was excellent last year, and he's been a great pitcher throughout his career. But so let's see if he can establish himself as the top guy. Maybe he can if he can repeat that season. That's going to be tough because it was a very good season, but it's possible. He is a very good pitcher, and he's still relatively in his prime. So looking for him to kind of establish that number one spot if he can. But a guy that will be challenging for that number one spot and has been for years at this point is Zach Wheeler, who is our number two. ERA-wise, 3.6. It wasn't really the best for Zach Wheeler. However, I feel like, a lot of Phillies pitchers have had some issues with their FIP and their ERA not matching up because they've had some defensive issues. Now, that is hopefully going to be a little bit alleviated this season because they won't have to play Kyle Schwarber in the field, hopefully, for their sake anyways. So that should help some of their pitching, but FIP-wise, Zach Wheeler was excellent, and that's kind of what I'm looking at for predictive reasons. He's gonna give you almost 200 innings probably, and he's gonna give you excellent strikeout numbers. He doesn't walk a ton of guys. He's got great command. He's got great stuff. Pretty much everything you want in an ace, top of the rotation guy. That's Zach Wheeler.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to see what the next season or two has in store for Zach Wheeler. He has such an interesting career, and I feel like we said this with DeGrom versus Syndergaard and Harvey, and now we're almost kind of saying it with Wheeler and versus maybe not DeGrom. DeGrom obviously derailed by injuries, but like who would have thought like Wheeler would arguably be the best of that bunch?
Yeah, that I
came
agree.
from the Mets system,
especially when we watched him back then.
Right, and obviously his career really took off when he signed with Philly. Reports lately that they're discussing another contract extension as he's going into his final year in Philly. So it looks like they're trying to lock him up for presumably the remainder of his career. I mean, he's entering his age 34 season, so I doubt it would just be a 1 or 2 year pact. If they were to extend him. But getting into who Zach Wheeler is, I mean, last year his ERA jumped a little bit, but all of the peripherals were still well within reason. And he was, if you take ERA out of it, he was almost better in a lot of categories, like more innings and lower, what's the walks per nine. And more strikeouts per nine. So like a lot of the stuff, he was just as good, if not better, even though the ERA went up. So it's like if you're just an ERA merchant, this is kind of an argument that ERA isn't everything, and ERA is a little bit more of a team stat than people like to admit. But Zach Wheeler is very, very good. Again, still doesn't feel right saying he's the second best pitcher in baseball, but that's no disrespect to Zach Wheeler. Like he is very, very good, and whatever Philly did with him has clearly worked, and I don't blame them for trying to extend him into his late 30s, because this seems like it's going to play maybe not to a Cy Young level competitor, but it seems like it'll play late into his career. Like he'll be a fine pitcher. So Zach Wheeler, number 2. It seems solid.
Yep, and then moving on to number 3, I think I convinced you a little bit with this a little guy. Bit. My guy Logan Webb comes in at number 3. Now we might have him a little higher than other people do, because peripherals is generally what you're looking at when you're trying to predict.
Well, you
things.
Just love run prevention. That's why he's here.
I love a good innings eater and run preventer. I don't care how it's done. I just like it. And Logan Webb gets the job done. He led the league in innings pitched with 216, and he had a great earn run average of 3.25, and his FIP was 3.16, which actually lines right up with Zach Wheeler at 3.15. Peripherals are actually on his side because he is so elite at getting the ground ball, and that's definitely the biggest thing. He's got one of the best changeups in the game. He'll actually give up some hard contact, but the thing is, it's all ground balls. It's all right at his third baseman, right at his shortstop, right at his second baseman, right at his first baseman, even. It gets the defense involved. It keeps them on their toes. I like that aspect. It's just the innings. The innings today are so important for me because there's just statistically there's so few players who get to 200 plus. So if you get to that 200 plus, I am automatically on board with you, even if you have like a 4 ERA, because you're still helping your team in a big way by eating those innings. So I'm a big fan of Logan Webb, and I'm hoping that he can continue to show that ground ball pitchers and innings eaters are very valuable.
Yeah, incredibly valuable, and not to mention he plays at arguably the most pitcher-friendly park in baseball. So, I'm not trying to argue like the Coors effect or anything like that.
You are correct.
What I'm saying is like, he kind of belongs here. He's just very, very good.
Definitely a great fit,
and he has a lot of things going for him. Is more of my argument than anything. But yeah, your point about the 200 innings absolutely plays. It kind of feels like almost like the 200 hits for position players. Although Luis Arias, like, look at it this way: Luis Arias had 203 hits last year, and he was like heralded as like one of the best season since Ted Williams. Like that kind of conversation. Which Luis Arias, I mean, he hit 354. He deserves some credit, but like 200 hits used to be a fairly common thing. Like you would get a couple guys that did it each year, and now it's like
I think it was was it just him and Freeman that did it last year?
Did Freeman do? I thought Freeman fell just short.
I think he did. But yeah, either way, you're absolutely spot on. It's just like those two stats are kind of that 200 mark is kind of just become a little bit tougher to get to.
Freeman did do it, which was crazy. It's the first time Freeman's done it in his career.
I know, which is wild because he's like such a good hitter, and guys don't swing the bat quite as often.
Yeah. Anyways, Logan Webb. I'm definitely rising on him. In general, in terms of like become an elite pitcher in baseball. I think he's a sneaky side, maybe not so sneaky anymore, but like a really good value pick for a Cy Young this year. Ohtani's not pitching, and I mentioned all these injuries, and I guess a lot of those guys are now in the AL anyways, so it kind of just opens up Logan Webb. We'll see where Blake Snell still signs. It's amazing how every year we do this, or not every year, every week we do this show, and we're still talking about how Blake Snell is unsigned. Although Cody Bellinger finally did sign.
At 2 a.m. last night.
Yeah, we forgot to mention that. A totally like unrealistic deal for the Nats. No way they could ever afford it. Certainly makes no sense for the Nats whatsoever.
That deal is a joke.
Yeah. I feel like I'm talking about anything but Logan Webb right now. Anyways, Logan Webb. I really like his game. Like I said, he has a lot going for him. You mentioned the ground ball rate. Like it's getting better and better. Certainly, a market jump from 2022, and he was great in 2022 as well. So now he's learning to pitch to contact a little bit more, which directly correlates with the increase in innings. I wouldn't be shocked if he pitched over 200 innings again. The Giants on paper seem to be a little bit better, so that should help, maybe his wins and kind of, other
get some more eyes on him.
Like kind of the sexy eye-popping numbers. It should help a little bit when that team's a little bit more competitive. So we'll see. I'm certainly not going to put too much stock into the Giants. But yeah, Logan Webb, he of the top three. It sounds crazy. Of the top three, I have him. I feel most comfortable about him in the top three, which is kind of baffling considering Garrett Cole's on the list. But that's just kind of where we're at. Like I think Logan Webb he's like the new. He's the person the baton's being passed to. Like Garrett Cole, Zach Wheeler, like mid-30s.
Yep.
Right, and now Logan Webb is like entering the conversation.
And we're not that crazy, by the way. He did finish like third in Cy Young voting last year.
Yeah, so it's not a huge stretch, especially when you factor in injuries and stuff like that.
Yeah, and he's the perfect kind of pitcher to throw a lot of innings consistently because he doesn't have to rely on velocity so much. So that's he'll be able to increase his innings. But then we move to a kind of a totally different type of pitcher, almost completely the opposite, with Blake Snell coming in at number 4, who, like we mentioned, is not signed still, which is wild. But He obviously is coming off the Cy Young award that he won. He threw some innings. He didn't go crazy, but 180 innings. That's very solid. And the the run prevention and the hit prevention were pretty much unbelievable. They basically were like, just throw the ball. Like, if you walk a guy, if you walk two guys, I don't care, because you're gonna strike out the next three. You're gonna get a dude to hit a ground ball that nobody can hit his pitches. he like easily led the league in hits per nine, and this is now the second time he's done this in his career with the Cy Young. So very interesting. It's just I'm not sure exactly how to predict him going forward, because he did it in such a unique way. But I also can't see him falling that far, even if maybe some luck type things turn around. But yeah, he's just his breaking stuff specifically is essentially unhittable. So yeah, I mean, and he did walk a lot of guys, and it just didn't matter. It just didn't matter. So he might be the one guy that can buck the trend of walks really hurting you all the time. But we have to kind of wait and see, because he also had a couple seasons before last year where he wasn't, amazing. He was still really good, but not amazing. So I'm just kind of interested to see his career progression from here going forward. He's just a very interesting player, but first he's got to get on a team.
Yeah, he's, of anyone in this top 10, I know he belongs here. He's very difficult to rank.
Yeah.
Because there's a legitimate argument against him. Now, I think that goes to a certain extent. Like, for those saying Blake Snell's not worth the money he's commanding, that's where you kind of lose me. I mean, 2-time Cy Young Award winner. I care about results. The walks are a little bit high, but I mean, I'm taking the strikeouts and the ERA and like all of the run prevention numbers. Like, his stuff is just so good. If you give me 180 innings every year, I'm going to be just fine. I'm not going to be crying that you didn't give me 20 more innings, especially if it leads to, good results for the team. The crazy thing about him, and I guess if you think about it, with him not going deep into games very often, he's only had 2 years with more than 10 wins, with more than 9 wins, and both of them he won a Cy Young, which is kind of nuts. Yet again, a reason why wins are a team stat more than anything. But it's just crazy. He started over 30 games for only the second time in his career. Both times he's won a Cy Young. So it's like, a direct correlation between health and productivity with him. Like, even in the years where he's been banged up, like I think 2022, he missed the start of the year and then came on about halfway through the year, maybe just before, and was like really, really strong. But, the Padres were, I might be mixing up my years, but just like,
he definitely had some
kind of lost
troubles
in the shuffle. Yeah, he kind of just got lost in the shuffle with his injury troubles and all of the big names on the Padres. But like, he's been solid when he's been pitching. It's just how often he's been pitching. But when he's healthy, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. Yep. Like, there's just no debating it. So he definitely belongs on this list. 4 seems a little high for me, but it's just a weird year for pitchers. It just is. So I have no problem with it, and certainly, the numbers are hard to argue against in a lot of respects. 2-time Cy Young Award winner, only one of those guys on this list.
Yep, that is true. And we might be looking at a potential future Cy Young winner in our number 5 spot, as much as I don't like to say that, because number 5 is Spencer Strider of the Atlanta Braves. Now, I gave Strider some crap. Not necessarily him specifically, but more so the media around his season last year, because he was being pushed hard to be a Cy Young winner when it just wasn't going to happen. He had a 3-point...
He would have been one of the worst Cy Young winners of all time.
I mean, it would have been bad, because he had a 3.86.
Maybe not Bartolo Colon bad, but it would have been bad.
He had a 3.86 ERA. And listen, I know that we're talking about FIP a lot, about, different metrics here that trying to predict things, but at the end of the day, the awards are about the results. So I know that his FIP was really good, and I know that he struck out like the most batters per 9 innings at the amount of innings he threw like ever in the history of the game. But that doesn't matter for Cy Young voting. Having said that, it does matter for my prediction, which is why he gets a top 5 spot, because yeah, he's pretty freaking good. He is striking out batters at a rate that we've never seen before. His real only flaw was the homer. He gave up the homer at, kind of a slightly above average rate. He wasn't actually like ridiculously bad with the homers, but he also gave them up at bad times. So that can be a contributing factor towards the difference between his ERA and his FIP. As well as, other defensive factors. Sometimes guys just get unlucky. But either way, I'm pretty confident that he's going to have a good season, and he's definitely going to be a guy to look out for to win the Cy Young.
I'm just going to say he's going to win the Cy Young this year.
It kind of feels like it's going to happen.
It just is.
'Cause, yeah.
So much of the awards is like best player, best team, and pitching you can't really do that, but they're going to, because his stats are, like, so many of his stats are really good, like the strikeouts per 9. His ERA was probably the only thing that held him back last year from beating out Snell, because people are so, hyper focused on the walks with Snell that they are not really looking at anything else. Like, people will talk about, oh, Snell doesn't pitch deep into games. Spencer Strider only had 6 more innings pitched than Snell did last year.
Yeah.
So it's like they're so hyper focused on, opposite ends, the walks with Snell and the strikeouts with Strider. But I do think if his ERA is like a 3.3 and all the other numbers stay the same, I guess the home runs might have to come down, but like all the other numbers stay the same, and he has like a 3.3 ERA, he's gonna win the Cy Young.
Yeah.
Like, he is very, very good. I'm not trying to deny that. It's just a little bit of too much too soon with him. Like, he's only 24. I have no doubt in my mind he will win a Cy Young at some point. And I just said it, like, right here, that I think he'll win it this year. But I am not ready to say he's like one of the game's best, which kind of sounds backwards, but that's just how it is. Yeah. There's plenty of guys that win one Cy Young and then they're just good the rest of their careers, but they're not ever back to that level. Like, the list is so long. And I don't know if that's where Strider's going to go. He's still very young, like I mentioned. But right now, he is a little overrated because he gets a lot of hype, and it comes with the territory of the Braves. And, that insanely stacked team, he's going to get that hype because there's so many eyes on the Braves. But I'm not ready to, put him, top 3 yet.
Yeah.
But 4 or 5 sounds just about right.
Yeah, and again, if he has another season similar to this where he maybe brings the RA a little bit, which could flip, because his FIP was 2.85. He was clearly slightly unlucky regardless of anything that happened, but if he can bring that closer together with a similar innings and similar K numbers, then yeah, he's going to be in the top 3.
He had a 1.83 FIP in 2022.
Yeah, no, he was on a rate basis in 22. He was
very good,
insane, and even in 23 as well. But yeah, no, I just said he's on the freaking Braves, man.
That's basically what it is.
It just hurts.
Basically what it is. Yep. Yep. Speaking of guys I like to win the Cy Young this year, I'm doing it. I'm doing it.
I love it.
Number six is Kevin Gausman. He's going to win the Cy Young this year.
I love it. Yeah, you had him at 4, right?
I had him at 4. Yeah, I had him at 4. You had it down at 7, so it's your fault.
Yeah, my bad.
But I really like Kevin Gausman's game. I truly cannot believe that this is the same pitcher that was horrible in Baltimore, that was kind of horrible for the Braves, that was horrible in Cincinnati, and, take it back to the Logan Webb thing, went to San Francisco and revived his career.
Yep.
To the point where now he's one of the older guys. He hasn't really done it yet because he's more of a relative newcomer to that top echelon status. But, man, I really like his game and his pitch usage. Last year wasn't his best, but it was still very, very good. 3.16, 2.97 FIP. All of those peripherals are really supportive of him. It sounds, again, not the most in-depth analytical, but like I think there's just bigger problems with the Blue Jays. And I can't really, back up that claim, but you look at Vladdy, you look at some of the other guys, it's just like, why are we not getting consistent results? And it feels like it's just a Blue Jays problem. But Kevin Gausman is kind of bucking that trend in some respects, because he's been able to do this in spite of a tumultuous situation in Toronto, between playing in Florida and underperforming and all this stuff. Kevin Gausman is the real deal, and that's kind of just how I have so much faith in him. And I think this is the year, in what is just, I mean, we're talking about this top 10, is what is just a weird year for pitchers. So I think you'll see guys like Kevin Gausman and potentially Spencer Strider both be first-time Cy Young Award winners. And I am standing on that.
Standing on business. He's standing on business already.
Yeah. I was going to say, I was like, do I want to? Because I'm like, it's teasing it a little bit for our season predictions episode. But I really like what Kevin Gausman does. High ground ball rate, which I really like.
Yeah, and I definitely like Gausman too. I did have him a little bit lower at number 7, but obviously a huge fan. The reason I had him a little bit lower is just because he is slightly older than some of these other guys. But he's only 33, so it's not like he's ancient or anything. And pretty much everything lines up for him the past 3 seasons. He's just been very, very solid. He gives you innings. He's going to be one of the top strikeout guys in the league. I think he was the top strikeout guy in the AL last year.
He was.
He was. If he can bring the walks back down to that 2022 level and keep his strikeouts at the same rate, then I could definitely see it, because honestly, 2022 he was actually unlucky though. He was pretty unlucky, because if you look at the metrics, he was your Cy Young. But same thing, his ERA, just the result wasn't there, and he didn't.
Who won it that year?
Who was the AL in 22?
My brain is not working.
Oh shoot!
All right, okay, I can do this. I'm gonna do this.
This wasn't that.
It had to have been.
Burns was 21 in the NL. I remember that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We're gonna do this. All right.
I got one in the wrong league.
Yeah, in the wrong year. Okay.
Wasn't Framber Valdez?
Cease. Who beat Cease? Cease came in second. It's got to be maybe someone that's changed teams, because I'm going through the AL, and I cannot. Did Ohtani win?
No. Shoot.
Why can I not? Why is this so hard?
AL 22. I'm also blanking. It wasn't Framber Valdez, right? He didn't win.
No.
Verlander. It was fucking Verlander.
Was it Verlander? That's what I said, but
was it Verlander? No, wait. Was he 20? Was he 21 though? He might have been 21.
No, I guess
because he was hurt, wasn't he? Oh shit. Hold on.
No, I think it is Verlander. I couldn't remember when Verlander signed with the Mets.
Yeah. Okay. All right. It was 2022. He won the Cy Young. That's correct.
Yeah, it was Verlander.
That took us way too.
All that for like the most obvious
answer. I know,
answer.
and it's funny because like. Yeah, I just like kind of forget about him because he's so old now. But like he was 39 when he won that. So
yeah,
crazy.
Anyways,
yeah, back to it. Where were we?
Yeah, no idea. Kevin Gausman, very good. A little bit unlucky in 2022, but it seemed to be a stacked pitching year. So I think he has the stuff to do it, and he's my pick for Cy Young in 2024. All right, moving on. The next guy on our list has won a Cy Young before, and very well could win another one this year in the AL, and that is Corbin Burns, the newest member of the Baltimore Orioles.
May or may not be my pick.
Oh, little tease there as well. I can't blame you. I think, I was talking about the Blue Jays situation. Again, not entirely plugged into that, social media in that team. But the Brewers kind of seem the same way. I mean, they let their manager go to a division rival for nothing, right? So that kind of just gives you some insight to how that organization runs. And I'm sure Corbin Burns has to be breathing a deep sigh of relief to be out of that organization and be on. They were the best team in the American League last year, right? Statistically, yeah, they faltered in the playoffs, and maybe there's rest versus rust arguments there. But the Orioles needed pitching, and they got arguably the best pitcher they could.
Yeah.
I mean, like if
definitely one of them.
We talked about people saying Garrett Cole best pitcher in baseball. If someone comes to me and says Corbin Burnes is the best pitcher in baseball, I'm not arguing.
Yeah, and I mean that would be accurate over the past 3 seasons, anyway. So
right, like I'm not arguing. Like I think reacting to last year in an extreme way would be a major and unfortunate overreaction. And the fact that he's not even 30 yet. Corbin Burnes feels like he's been in the league for 10 years. He feels like he's a Garrett Cole or someone like that. But I think people are just forgetting how good he was from 2020. I'm going to include it because it helps the argument. From 2020 to 2022, he was exceptional. Even last year was like a small hiccup, but he's still at a 3.39 ERA. It's not like he was absolutely awful and unwatchable and you just couldn't throw him out there. Like he was very, very good, and he's been outside 2019, which he only started 4 games, so I don't know what happened there, but he's been very, very good his entire career. So I think when someone shows you who they are, when you have 6-ish seasons, the ish being 2020, 6-ish seasons of like really, really good like performance, you just believe it. Corbin Burnes is really, really good, and honestly, I think this is too low on Corbin Burnes. I kind of wish I put him higher, but maybe I was overreacting a little heavily to 2023. But I really like your pick. If that is your pick, I won't have you spoil anything. I really like it. He needs to get his walks back down. That was the big killer last year. His strikeouts went down, his walks went up. But if he can get back to kind of his career norm averages for those 2 stats, we're going to see a really, really good pitcher on a really, really good team.
Yeah, so I'll say maybe this is my pick. I have another guy
okay.
that is in mind in Cole Ragans, who I'm debating as like a dark horse type pick. Because I really like him.
He looked good today.
The 101 miles per hour. I was like, oh my god, This dude's good. But yeah, so
even the Royals are developing pitchers. the Nats.
So Corbin Burnes. I do think he's in for a really big season. He's in a walk year. Guys tend to want to pitch their best or play their best when they're about to enter their free agency, and I wouldn't expect Corbin Burnes to be much different than Blake Snell was last year when he did the same thing. So I'm really liking Burnes getting into an environment with new ownership, young squad around him that's ready to win and hungry.
It's more motivation.
And he's the guy. That he is the piece. Like that when the Orioles made the playoffs last year, we everybody, it wasn't just us, was saying they need more pitching. And it definitely proved itself true in the playoffs. And so they went out and did it after the new owners bought the team. So I love that. And if he gets off to a quick start, I kind of thought they'd already do it, honestly. But if he gets off to a quick start, look for an extension talks. I don't know if they'll necessarily do it right away, but look for talks to start unless he does want to just go to free agency, which more power to him if he does. But he's obviously excellent. And yeah, last year was just a slight dip, but I think he's going right back up.
Yeah. Agreed. All right, moving on to number 8 on our list. And I'll be honest, probably the most unsure inclusion of any player I have in this top 10, and that's Zach Gallen. Obviously, Zach Gallen last year was great. Like, really, really, really solid. 210 innings, 3.47 ERA. The numbers look good. Obviously, the Diamondbacks came out of nowhere to win the NL pennant, and he was a large part of that. I just can't tell who the real Zach Gallen is. If he's more like, the last 2 years, I'm feeling really good about it. But something just tells me that he's a really good pitcher and not like a top 10 pitcher. And you kind of look at some of the peripherals. It's not horrible. Like, he dropped his walk rate. His K rate has dropped a little bit over the past couple of years, but like it's still fine. There's some things that just kind of what's like a step like a red flag, like an orange flag, like that's kind of just how I
just
feel.
a slight worry.
Yeah. His expected ERA is like a 4.18 last year, where he had a 3.47, and that's not entirely uncommon. It's never really going to be a direct match. His FIP was respectable at a 3.26. So I'm just trying to kind of put my finger on it. I need one more year to finally be sold, but I had him in my top 10 nevertheless. I had him at 10 because I'll talk about my honorable mention here in a little bit, but like I have seen enough to where I think he is a top 10 in this current landscape. I just don't know if I've seen enough to have him stay there, if that makes sense.
No, I think that's fair because there are a couple concerns, and one of the biggest concerns was that he wasn't a very good pitcher on the road. He did a lot of his best damage at home. So he needs to try and even that out for me. That's basically one of his last things because he threw 210 innings. He had the most starts in the league. I love that reliability. Basically, what this guy's going to go deep in the game, and he's going to provide you with great strikeout numbers. He's not going to walk a ton of guys. He doesn't give up a ton of homers. Pretty much everything you want. Just can he do it again at this extent? I think it's kind of okay to question, is he an ace at this point? Just because
that's kind of how I'm feeling.
Yeah, just because it was the first time he's done this, and there was troubles about how well he pitched on the road, and he wasn't amazing in the playoffs. He had a couple good outings, but he wasn't incredible by any means. So, kind of just trying to see, does he got that dog in him? Let's see this. Let's see some more dog, and then we'll be able to definitively keep him in the top 10. But that's a good point. This current pitching landscape, he's definitely a top 10 because this is just a weird list.
Super dependable, like. Any team would love to have him. Not saying, not arguing any of that. I think it's also maybe I'm just missing some of the like appealing stats, the strikeouts or anything like that. I need a little bit more, even though he had a great year last year. It kind of seems a little bit greedy, but I just want to see something else. Just show me a little bit more. All right, moving on to number 9 on our list is kind of a surprising one. Like, I have no issues with him on this list, but you talk about just wild careers, and now he has yet another new team. That is Sonny Gray. And I think there were times, especially, when he was coming up with Oakland, where you're like, oh yeah, Sonny Gray's top 10, or Sonny Gray's going to be top 10. I think that was fine. But then the next, 3 to 4 years transpired, and you're just like, Sonny Gray, top 10, get out of here. And then, it's just, back and forth, snip, snap, snip, snap. And, the fact of the matter is, he was great in Minnesota. 2-year stint. I mean, even before that in Cincinnati, he was super solid. So, it wasn't a huge surprise. It was just, his career is almost bookended with, really good performance. And in the middle is just, this. It's not a pile of shit, but it's it's a small pile of shit. It's just been a wild career for Sonny Gray. But he was exceptional last year. I understand why he got paid. He just was really, really solid. 279, 283 FIP, both really, really, really good. Doesn't strike out a lot of guys. Walks some, not terribly, but he doesn't allow home runs. Last year, 0.39 home runs per 9 innings. That's what really saved him in my mind. Pretty good ground ball rate. It's just he learned how to pitch almost. He just was not getting beat in a lot of ways, and that's just you have to commend that. If you're smart enough to know how to pitch, know how to get guys out without the top tier strikeout stuff, you belong in this top 10 list.
Yeah, no, I absolutely loved what I saw from Sonny Gray last year. That sweeper really became his main weapon, with his sinker tunneling off of that. It was just very hard for hitters to make solid contact. You're kind of going up there hoping to get a single as opposed to hitting a homer off of him, just because he's so hard to connect with, so hard to barrel with that sweeper especially. He's also a little bit older for this list, but
Yeah.
I do like that. Yeah, I think what you said is true. He really did. He looked like he learned how to pitch last year. He wasn't necessarily trying to strike everyone out. He was trying to get weak contact, which I definitely appreciated because it helped him get his innings back up to where, he was throwing 200 innings as an A, and then he went to New York. That whole saga of his career was just it just wasn't a good match. It wasn't a good fit in New York, and since he's left there, he's been pretty good. So, yeah, I'm not. You know what? I was gonna say I'm excited, but I'm not because he's on the Phillies. So, I guess I'm intrigued to see.
Keep forgetting. Why do I think Cardinals?
Because they were in on him early on. That was a report.
But who did they? Oh, they ended up signing the old team.
Yeah, they got like a bunch of old. They got Gibson and.
But I guess
Lance
Sonny
Lynn.
Gray would technically qualify for
AARP. But so
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Sonny Gray.
No, Sonny Gray signed with the Cardinals.
He did?
I'm not insane. Yeah, he signed with the Cardinals.
Awesome.
You said that, and I was like,
who did the Phillies? Didn't the Phillies sign somebody?
Yeah, Aaron Nola.
Yeah, okay. I could have swore he signed with the Phillies.
I was like, you said it. I was like, oh yeah, Phillies. That sounds right. I was like, wait.
See, that doesn't. No. I've been in baseball mode for like a couple months. Like I should know that.
I haven't.
That's awesome. I can actually root for him. Let's go.
Yeah,
you know what? I'm a big fan of Sonny Gray, and I hope he does well this season. There we go.
Yeah, he's definitely top 5.
He's awesome. I love him. Yeah, but in all seriousness, he's excellent. And his ability to induce soft contact is one of the highest levels in the game right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And rounding out our list, number 10 is the guy if I had to pick one pitcher in baseball, say, hey, 3 years from now, who do you think's an unquestionable top 3 arm in the league? George Kirby is my pick. I absolutely love George Kirby's game. And I know for some it might be a little early to make this call. And I get it. But again, this kind of turns back to the whole conversation of the current pitching landscape, right? There is a changing of a passing the baton between the old guard and the young pups. Right, like we talked about it off the top. Verlander, Scherzer, Ohtani due to injury, DeGrom we'll see, but like all of those staples are at the end of their careers. Aside from Ohtani, obviously that's a different story. But like all those guys that we've been used to watching and seeing, even guys like Cole and Wheeler, who are at the top of our list now, they're approaching that age where statistically they become like good, but not quite the dominant aces they once were in their quote unquote prime. They still could have one or two more really successful seasons. I mean, Justin Verlander just won a Cy Young at age 39, so we just remembered 10 minutes ago. But for me, George Kirby is like right up there with the Spencer Striders of the world, with who's going to be some of the best pitchers in baseball in, maybe even sooner than that. I really, really, really like George Kirby's game. And the thing is, I know there's room for improvement. I mean, especially in the strikeout numbers. His strikeout numbers were not like what you would expect for a guy who put up the numbers he did. But he was still really respectable. 3.35 ERA, 3.34 FIP. So this is one of the few instances where like it does actually match up. It's incredibly rare. And the home runs were perfectly acceptable. Does not walk a lot of guys whatsoever. Pitches to contact, knows how to get outs. To do this at age 25 and not like you see so many guys who have like great stuff that struggle with command, struggle with walks, give up the long ball, whatever it may be. Kirby's entering the league and like not really struggling with any of that. So I think that the ceiling is immensely high for him, and I cannot wait to see what he does this year. I don't know what the Mariners are doing, but I just know George Kirby is going to be a large part of what they are trying to do.
George Kirby is Mike Rizzo's favorite pitcher because he does not throw ball 4 very often. He led the league in walks per 9 innings, less than 1 walk per 9 innings.
It's absurd.
Modern baseball is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Great band, by the way. But yeah, no, I'm definitely a big fan of George Kirby. I had him at number 11 if we were expanding, because like you said, he is very young, and I'm curious, can he continue to do this? Can he attack like this and
is the book on him going to change the way he pitches? And basically?
I think he will be able to continue, because he actually like you said, he still has room for improvement in the strikeout numbers, specifically with his breaking pitches. And I think that those pitches can still improve and get better. So as he continues to expand his arsenal, I would expect the K numbers to go up, and I would like to see the walk numbers stay there. I mean, he's just kind of a here it is, hit it type guy, and it's very effective for him. And it helps him get deep into games. That's a big thing. His pitch counts were never high. Even though he had 190 innings, which is at the upper tier, he probably could have gone more. In many different games, they pulled him earlier because he is a younger guy. But I would like to see his leash get extended and start getting into the 7th and 8th, and maybe even be a guy who can be one of the few players who can do a complete game shutout. I'm ready.
Speaking of things that were so common and now are just complete games in general, not even shutouts.
Yeah, for real. So I love a good complete game, and George Kirby, if they let him cook, might be a guy who can do that once, maybe multiple times per season.
Yep. And I'll just roll right into it. My honorable mention, a guy I did not feel great about leaving off this list, but I need to see that one truly dominant season, the season we have thought for a while was coming, but just hasn't come to fruition yet. Luis Castillo is my number 11. I really, really like his game. You want to talk about one of the best changeups in baseball? He has one. I just need to see that elite season. He's been very, very, very good in his career, but I can't. There's so much very good that I can't necessarily argue if he's elite. If that sort of makes sense. Whereas like George Kirby, super young, we can kind of project a little bit. Luis Castillo is super steady, but like so steady that you almost can't argue, that he was elite. But I really like his game. And you want to talk there's a lot of sneaky Cy Young picks in the AL, and Luis Castillo is still one of them as well.
Yeah, especially like we said, there really isn't a end-all be-all guy to pick. Like, most of your picks are going to be like, all right, yeah, that could happen.
Sure.
I have a few honorable mentions here. So I'll go with my first guy, who I actually did rank in the top 10, which is Pablo Lopez, who I absolutely love and have really been into his game since he's been in Miami. And he's like 27. I just found that out. He's very, very young. He's just entering his prime, coming off of his best season where he struck out more than 10 batters per 9 innings. I'm very excited to see what he does for that Twins staff. And then
like that pick.
I've got Kodai Senga was another guy I want to talk about.
I also like that pick.
He has now entered the injured list, so he won't be starting the season. So I decided just to keep him off, because if he was going to be healthy, I was looking at him as a potential Cy Young guy if he'd get those innings up, because his stuff is clearly there. And my final honorable mention I will say is Justin Steele. This is another young pitcher.
Really good season.
Young pitcher who is another guy, like you talked about the changing of the guard kind of. He's another guy who's coming up. And he struggled right at the end, because he had a really good season up until he got into basically, this is career high in innings. So he got up and started to get a little bit fatigued, had a couple stinker starts at the end that sort of took him out of Cy Young contention. But he's a great pitcher, and I'm excited to see what he does moving forward with that Cubs team that added Cody Bellinger last night. So now I'm looking at the Cubs as potentially, fighting for that NL Central spot. But those are my three honorable mentions for the starters. Let's move right into our relievers real quick. We're going to do it quickly because we've already gone
just
up.
rattle them off.
So we're doing a top 5 for relievers. It's extremely difficult to pick these, by the way. So we went with Devin Williams at number 1, David Bednar at number 2, Emmanuel Clase at number 3, Josh Hader at number 4, and our number 5 pick is Edwin Diaz, who is returning this season. Pretty excited to see him. Although he is on the Mets, I do like watching him pitch. He's very fun to watch. And I will say the honorable mention is Tanner Scott, who has been very good for the last 2 seasons for Miami. He threw a lot of innings last year, and he's pretty nasty. So watch out for him. But I think that list is solid because these guys have been there, done that, and it's hard to stay consistent as relievers. Right. So these guys have been consistent, and as difficult as that is, that means that they have to be, a little bit more respected in that front. But Edwin Diaz obviously didn't pitch last year, but everyone knows
there's enough.
If he gets back to even like 75% of his 2022 season, then he's still a top 5 reliever in the league. But that's pretty much going to wrap up ranking season. Nick, how are you feeling about these rankings that we've done? Because I'm feeling pretty good. I think we did a good job.
Yeah, it feels like this year we're not going to look back and be like, ooh, tough one.
Yeah, there's
but we'll see.
There was definitely some of that from our previous lists, and but I like where we're at right now.
Did you know Pablo Lopez signed an extension with the Twins?
Yeah, no, yes.
When did where was I? I don't remember that. Anyways.
Yes, he did.
Anyways, we're slowly getting back into baseball mode, if you can't tell. So yeah, ranking season is kind of the official close of the winter talk, and with the close of the winter talk means we get to talk spring training. So as this next month or so unfolds, we'll talk divisions, we'll talk what's going on in spring training, we'll have some more Nats episodes. We are really ramping up the season. Before we know it, opening day will be here. Lots to talk about, lots to discuss, lots of bold takes to happen, so I cannot wait to get into it. In the meantime, be sure to follow us on Twitter. All of our handles are below if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're not watching on YouTube, first of all, I appreciate you listening on the audio format, but there's also a video format. So please check us out, District Baseball on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button. Follow us on TikTok at District Baseball and Twitter at District BSB. We appreciate listening. Next week, we start the division previews, so cannot wait, and you won't want to miss it. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, see ya.